Last Tuesday, I pressed the call button for elevator B and heard my dead wife answer from 3 floors below ground level. My name is Brian Jacobs, and I've been head of security at St. Mary's General Hospital for 12 years. I know every corridor, every stairwell, every maintenance tunnel in this place. I've handled psychiatric breaks, violent patients, drug seekers, and grieving families having complete meltdowns. I thought I'd seen everything this job could throw at me. The hospital closed 3 floors temporarily for renovation. Asbestos removal, new wiring, updated electrical systems, the works. My job during the shutdown was simple enough. Walk the empty floors twice per shift, check that construction crews hadn't left safety hazards behind, make sure no one was sleeping rough in the abandoned wards. Basic security work, the kind of assignment that pays overtime while barely keeping you awake. The building felt completely different, with most of it empty. Sounds carried much further than usual. The heating system made noises I'd never noticed before during regular operations. Emergency lighting cast everything in that sickly yellow glow that makes even familiar spaces look haunted. But I'm not the type to get spooked by shadows and settling pipes. 23 years in the military before this hospital job taught me to trust my training, not my nerves. The elevator banks were supposed to be locked down during construction. All 6 units powered completely off, doors sealed with bright orange industrial tape. I'd verified the lockout myself the first night, personally checked every floor button, made sure the emergency phones were disconnected. Standard safety protocol for construction zones. But on my 3rd week of night duty, walking past the main elevator bank around 2 in the morning, I heard something that made me stop dead in my tracks. A quiet ding. The unmistakable sound of an elevator arriving at a floor. Elevator B's indicator light was glowing, showing it had stopped at sublevel 3. We don't have a sublevel 3. St. Mary's has exactly 1 basement level for utilities and storage, marked as sublevel 1 on every building plan I've memorized. That's it. I've been down in that basement hundreds of times over 12 years for security checks, maintenance calls, dealing with homeless people who sometimes slip in through the loading dock. It's 1 level down from ground floor. Concrete walls, steam pipes overhead, storage rooms full of medical supplies, and old equipment. Nothing below that but solid foundation and earth. I should have called maintenance immediately. Should have logged it as a simple electrical malfunction and continued with my rounds. Should have trusted 12 years of experience that told me buildings don't just grow new floors overnight, like some kind of architectural cancer. Instead, I reached out and pressed the call button. The doors opened immediately, like they'd been waiting specifically for me. The elevator car appeared completely empty, lit by that harsh fluorescent light that makes everyone look sick. The button panel showed all the regular floors, plus 3 additional buttons I'd never seen before in my life. SL2, SL3, and SL4. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened when I stepped inside. The renovation had started 6 weeks ago, turning floors 7 through 9 into a complete construction zone. My new assignment was solo night security for the empty sections. 2 comprehensive rounds per shift, checking all access points, documenting anything unusual or potentially dangerous. The hospital's insurance company demanded constant security presence, and frankly, the overtime pay helped with Rachel's medical bills that were still trickling in 6 months after the funeral. My route was methodical and predictable. Start at floor 9, work systematically down through 8 and 7, then finish with a thorough check of the basement level. Each floor took approximately 40 minutes to sweep properly. Patient rooms stripped completely bare, hallways filled with scaffolding and heavy plastic sheeting, construction equipment covered with protective tarps. It looked like a building in wartime, abandoned hastily, but with clear intention to return. The elevator bank sat directly at the heart of the building's central core. 6 cars labeled A through F, normally running from the underground parking garage up to the 10th floor administrative offices. During the shutdown, maintenance had powered them all down completely and sealed every door with bright orange construction tape. I'd watched the entire process myself, signed the safety work order, noted it carefully in my security log. Protocol demanded no elevator access during major renovation work. Walking those empty halls night after night, I gradually adjusted to the profound silence. No monitors beeping constantly, no overhead PA announcements, no code blue alerts echoing through corridors. Just my own footsteps on polished floors and the steady mechanical hum of ventilation systems keeping the air clean, even though nobody was around to breathe it. The emergency lighting gave everything a pale yellow tint that made familiar spaces look alien and unwelcoming. The basement level was always my final stop each round. Sublevel 1, according to the official building directory, utilities, storage areas, the morgue, and a loading dock that connected to the main hospital through a service tunnel. I knew that underground space better than my own apartment after 12 years. Concrete walls painted institutional green, steam pipes running overhead like metal arteries, fluorescent fixtures that buzzed and flickered constantly but never quite died completely. Everything remained perfectly routine for the first 2 weeks. Check all the doors, test the emergency lighting systems, make sure nobody had broken in looking for prescription drugs or valuable copper wire. Log the times, note any issues, move on to the next checkpoint. The kind of methodical work that keeps you busy without keeping you particularly awake or engaged. Then, exactly 15 nights into the assignment, I heard the ding, walking past the elevator bank at precisely 2:17 in the morning. I heard that familiar mechanical sound of an elevator arriving at a designated floor. My immediate thought was that some maintenance worker had forgotten to fully shut down one of the units during the lockout procedure. But when I looked up at the indicator panel, all 6 elevator displays were completely dark. The orange construction tape remained intact on every single door, except elevator B clearly showed SL3 on its floor display. I stood there staring at those glowing digital numbers for a full minute, waiting for them to change or go completely dark like the others. SL3, sublevel 3. According to every building plan I'd studied and memorized, every blueprint I'd examined in 12 years of working at this hospital, that floor simply didn't exist. St. Mary's had exactly 1 basement level, nothing more. The rational explanation seemed obvious enough. Electrical malfunction caused by construction work, some kind of power surge or short circuit that briefly activated the display system incorrectly. Construction projects cause all kinds of electrical problems and equipment failures. I made a careful note to report it to maintenance first thing in the morning and continued with my normal rounds. But 20 minutes later, walking past the elevators again on my return route, I heard that distinctive ding sound a second time. Elevator B's indicator was still glowing brightly, still showing SL3. And this time, I noticed something else that made my skin crawl. The temperature had dropped significantly. My breath started misting slightly as I approached the elevator bank. The hospital's climate control system maintained a constant 72 degrees throughout the entire building, but the air near elevator B felt at least 10 degrees colder. I checked my digital thermometer. 68 degrees, and still falling steadily. I immediately called the main security desk to report a possible HVAC system malfunction. No answer on the first attempt. Tried again 5 minutes later with the same result. The building's internal communication system ran through basement servers, and sometimes major construction work interfered with those connections. I'd been temporarily cut off from central dispatch before during previous renovation projects. Standing completely alone in that corridor, watching Elevator B's indicator continue glowing SL3 while increasingly cold air seemed to seep steadily from behind the sealed doors, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Rachel died. The absolute certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with the natural order of the world. That's when I heard the first voice clearly. The voice came directly from inside Elevator B, muffled by the sealed doors and construction tape, but clear enough to understand every word. A woman calling desperately for help. Weak, frightened, sounding like someone who'd been trapped for hours without any assistance. I pressed my ear carefully against the orange tape sealing the elevator doors. The voice came again, more urgent this time. "Please, somebody help me. I can't get out of here. The doors won't open." Every security protocol I'd learned over 12 years told me to immediately call for backup, contact emergency services, get a qualified maintenance crew to open the doors safely using proper procedures. But my radio remained completely dead. The phones weren't connecting to anything, and someone was clearly trapped inside a supposedly powered-down elevator system. I carefully peeled back the industrial tape and pressed the call button. The doors opened immediately to reveal a completely empty elevator car. Normal fluorescent lighting, normal air temperature, standard control panel showing only the familiar floors from parking garage to administrative level. No additional sublevel buttons visible anywhere. No trapped woman. No sign that anyone had been inside the car recently. But I could still hear her voice distinctly, fainter now, but unmistakably present, coming from somewhere below. From deep within the elevator shaft itself. I stepped inside the car and pressed the button for sublevel 1. The elevator descended smoothly to the basement level, stopped with its usual mechanical precision at the familiar concrete corridors with buzzing fluorescent lights. Everything appeared exactly as it should be under normal circumstances, but the woman's voice was still audible, calling from even deeper in the building. I pressed the basement button again. This time, the elevator continued going down. The descent lasted much longer than it should have been physically possible. 30 seconds. A full minute. Descending far past where the building's foundation should logically end. Far past where electrical systems and utility pipes should give way to solid earth and bedrock. The elevator's floor indicator cycled through numbers that shouldn't exist according to any architectural plan. SL2, SL3, SL4. The doors finally opened on sublevel 3. The hallway beyond looked like a precise mirror image of the main hospital floors, but wrong in dozens of subtle ways that immediately set my nerves on edge. The ceiling tiles were a slightly different shade of institutional white. The floor patterns ran in the opposite direction from what I expected. Room numbers were completely backwards, starting at the far end of the hall and counting down instead of up like normal building numbering systems. Emergency lighting cast everything in that familiar sickly yellow glow. But the shadows fell at impossible angles, as if the light sources were positioned differently than I remembered from years of experience. The air carried the expected smell of hospital disinfectant mixed with something else. something organic and cloyingly sweet that reminded me of flowers left too long in stagnant water. I stepped cautiously out of the elevator, my footsteps echoing in ways that suggested the corridor extended much farther than it appeared to the eye. The basic architecture matched the upper floors exactly, but every single detail felt like a deliberate distortion, familiar enough to navigate confidently, alien enough to know with absolute certainty that I was somewhere that shouldn't exist. The woman's voice was much clearer now, coming distinctly from room SL 3078. I walked toward it, each step feeling progressively heavier than the last, like the air itself was thickening around my body. The door appeared identical to every other patient room door throughout the hospital. Same brushed steel handle, same safety glass window, same plastic nameplate holder mounted at regulation height. But the nameplate was wrong. Backwards, white text printed on a black background instead of the standard black text on white. Rachel Jacobs, my wife's name. The woman who died 6 months ago from surgical complications during what should have been a completely routine procedure. The woman whose voice I'd been hearing through sealed elevator doors. Standing outside that impossible room, I faced a choice that went against everything I'd been trained to believe about reality. If I opened that door, I was actively accepting that the impossible was somehow real. If I didn't open it, I was potentially abandoning someone who desperately needed help. But if Rachel was really behind that door, what did that make me? A grief-stricken widower talking to imaginary ghosts. A man so psychologically broken by loss that he was hallucinating entire floors of a hospital building? The rational part of my mind screamed that this was clearly a stress-induced breakdown. 6 months of suppressed grief finally manifesting as elaborate hallucinations. I should return to the elevator immediately. Go back to the real basement level. Call for psychiatric evaluation. Get the professional help I obviously needed. But if I was wrong about the hallucination, if someone was actually trapped and calling for help, walking away would make me the kind of person who abandons others in crisis, the kind of person who chooses personal safety over moral obligation. If I answer, I validate what can't be real. If I don't, I abandon my patients again. The voice called once more, much clearer now, unmistakably familiar. Brian, I know you're standing there. I've been waiting for you to find me. I reached slowly for the door handle. My hand was shaking noticeably, but I couldn't determine if it was from overwhelming fear or dangerous hope. Either emotion felt potentially catastrophic in a place that violated every law of physics and architecture. The handle turned easily under my grip. The door swung open on silent hinges. Rachel sat upright in a standard hospital bed, appearing exactly as she had during her final night alive. Same thin hospital gown that never provided adequate warmth. Same IV lines running into both arms. Same monitoring equipment beeping softly beside the bed in steady rhythms. She looked up at me and smiled the exact way she used to when I'd bring her coffee during my security rounds. "You found me," she said in her familiar voice. "I knew you would eventually." But something was fundamentally wrong with her eyes. They were Rachel's eyes, warm brown with distinctive flecks of gold, but they held a depth that seemed to extend infinitely, like looking into perfectly clear water, so deep you couldn't see the bottom. "Sit down, Brian." Her voice carried the same slight rasp from months of medication, the same way she drew out my name when she wanted my complete attention. "We have important things to discuss." I remained by the door, my hand still gripping the handle, ready to run if necessary. "You're not Rachel." "Of course I am." She shifted position in the bed, and the monitors responded with corresponding beeps. The IV drip continued its steady, measured rhythm. Who else could I possibly be? Rachel died 6 months ago. I was there when it happened. I held her hand during the final moments. Her expression remained unchanged. Still that patient, understanding smile, like she was carefully explaining something simple to a confused child. "Death isn't what you think it is, Brian. Not here in this place." The room felt smaller suddenly. The walls definitely closer than they'd been moments before. I backed toward the door. "Don't leave me again." Her voice carried a sharp note of desperation now. "You left me that night. You let me die completely alone. The nurses told me to get coffee. You were stable. The surgery went perfectly well. You wanted the coffee more than you wanted to stay with me." The accusation hit like a physical blow. Because it was absolutely true. I had wanted that coffee desperately. Wanted 5 minutes away from the overwhelming smell of disinfectant and the constant sound of machines keeping my wife alive. Wanted to pretend for just a moment that our lives were still normal. I came back immediately. I was only gone 10 minutes maximum, long enough for me to die alone. The monitors began beeping much faster. Rachel's breathing became visibly labored, exactly like that horrible night. Her skin took on the grayish pallor I remembered vividly from those final moments. I should have run then, should have trusted my survival instincts and gotten out of that impossible room immediately. Instead, I moved closer to the bed. "This isn't real. You're not real. Touch me." She extended her hand, and I could see the wedding ring I'd placed there 15 years ago. Feel my pulse. Look at the monitors. Everything here is completely real, Brian. More real than anything upstairs. I reached out without thinking. Her skin felt exactly right. Warm, soft, familiar. Her pulse was steady under my fingertips. But when I looked down at our joined hands, I saw that my fingers were passing directly through hers, like trying to hold onto smoke. The beeping stopped. All of it. The monitors, the IV pump, the ventilator I hadn't noticed before. Everything went completely silent. Rachel's eyes opened wide. Now they were completely black. Not just the pupils, everything, like staring into empty space. "You can't leave me here alone," she said, but her voice came from everywhere now. The walls, the ceiling, the floor beneath my feet. "If you go back up, I disappear forever. If you stay, we can be together always." The room began changing dramatically. The walls stretched upward, growing taller and narrower. The ceiling disappeared completely into shadows. The hospital bed became longer, wider, more like a morgue table than furniture for the living. "Choose, Brian. Leave me here in the darkness, or stay and never be alone again." I tried to pull my hand away. Couldn't. Her grip was stronger now, impossibly strong. The hand that had felt warm and familiar moments before now felt cold as stone. The room continued stretching, becoming a vertical shaft. It extended both up and down beyond sight. Other voices began calling from the darkness above and below. Patients who died in St. Mary's over the decades, all of them asking the same question. "Why did you let us die alone?" Mrs. Patterson from room 412. "Heart attack last winter." Tommy Rodriguez, 8 years old. Leukemia. Dr. Sarah Chen, car accident. Died in her own emergency room. All calling from the shadows. All asking why I wasn't there when they needed someone most. The voices grew louder, more insistent, filling the shaft with accusations. Rachel's face was changing now. the black eyes growing larger, the too wide smile revealing teeth that were definitely not human. "Stay with us, Brian. We're so lonely here. You understand loneliness. You've felt it every night since I died. Since you let me die." The shaft continued expanding, walls stretching impossibly far in all directions. The bed Rachel lay on was now floating in empty space, suspended by nothing visible. Other beds appeared in the darkness, dozens of them, hundreds, each containing someone who died alone in St. Mary's Hospital over the years, all watching me, all waiting for my decision. "You can end the loneliness," Rachel said. "Yours and ours. Just let go of the door." My hand was still gripping the handle, the only solid thing in a space that defied every law of physics. "Let go, Brian. Stay with your wife. Stay with all of us. We need you here." The voices echoed from everywhere and nowhere, a chorus of the dead demanding company in their endless isolation. I looked at Rachel's face one final time, the black eyes that went on forever, the smile that was far too wide for any human face, the skin that was beginning to look more like melting wax than living flesh. Her hand was still gripping mine with impossible strength, pulling me toward the floating bed, toward joining the chorus of voices in the darkness. "Choose now," she whispered, and I made my choice. I yanked my hand free with every ounce of strength I possessed and ran. Behind me, Rachel screamed, not with her voice alone, but with dozens of voices layered together in horrifying harmony. Patients, visitors, staff members, families, everyone who'd ever died in St. Mary's Hospital, all calling out in perfect unison. The sound followed me down the impossible corridor as I sprinted desperately toward the elevator. The doors were closing as I reached them. I threw myself inside just as they sealed completely shut. The elevator shot upward with violence that pressed me hard against the floor. Past SL4, past SL3, past SL2. The floor indicator spun wildly before finally settling on B for basement. When the doors opened, I was back in the familiar concrete corridors of sublevel 1. Real steam pipes overhead, real fluorescent lights buzzing and flickering, real dust motes floating in stale air that smelled like nothing more threatening than industrial cleaning supplies and old machinery. I called in sick for the rest of the week, told my supervisor I had severe food poisoning, needed time to recover. Spent 3 complete days in my apartment, trying desperately to convince myself I'd suffered some kind of grief-induced breakdown, stress-induced hallucination brought on by isolation and unprocessed loss, perfectly explainable from a psychological perspective. But when I finally returned to work the following Monday, I found something that changed everything. In my security office, tucked carefully under a stack of incident reports, was a patient identification bracelet, white plastic with black text, exactly like the one St. Mary's Hospital used for every admission. But this one was backwards, black plastic with white text, reading Rachel Jacobs in reversed lettering. I never reported what happened that night. How do you explain impossible floors and conversations with dead wives and elevators that descend through solid earth? But I did make some significant changes to my patrol route. Now I avoid the elevator bank entirely during my rounds. I take the stairs exclusively, even when my aging knees remind me I'm not as young as I used to be. The renovation finished 2 months later. Floors 7, 8, and 9 reopened with beautiful new patient rooms, completely updated electrical systems, and fresh paint throughout every corridor. The elevator bank was restored to full operation, all 6 cars running smoothly, serving floors from underground parking garage to the 10th floor administrative offices. But sometimes, usually around 2 in the morning when the hospital reaches its quietest point, I see elevator B's indicator briefly showing SL3. Just for a moment, just long enough to remind me that some doors shouldn't be opened, some questions shouldn't be answered, and some voices calling for help are better left unanswered. Last week, maintenance called to report strange sounds coming from the elevator shaft. Voices, they said, sounding like they were coming from far below the basement level. They asked if I wanted to investigate. I told them absolutely not.